This is All Figured Out. I'm Andrea Barr. I'm a career coach for parents, a mom of two, and I absolutely believe that you can continue to grow personally and professionally while protecting family time. We're about to figure out this work, life, and parenting stuff out together. Hello, and welcome back to the All Figured Out podcast. My name is Andrea Barr, and thank you so much for joining me again this week. I am coming to you with a part 2 on the FOMO episode that I did a few weeks back. So if you've not listened to that yet, let me find the number. It is episode number 146, and it is called Why FOMO Hits So Much Harder Once You Become a Parent. And I had a lot of fun recording that one. I did not realize how many thoughts I had on it. It ended up being a 45-minute episode of me talking about just the concept of missing out on things when you become a parent, that push and pull of honestly always wanting to be with your kids, but then sometimes wanting that independence back. And it's it's such a tricky one. And I had a lot to say, and a few of you reached out saying how much you enjoyed that. And I wanted to just double click, as they say in corporate speak, I wanted to double click on the part where we're talking about work, because that I realized could be its whole other episode. So I had some notes written down for that episode to talk about this particular topic. And that episode ended up being 45 minutes already. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to save this for its own conversation. So today we are going to be navigating and exploring and kind of poking around in the topic of working parents losing visibility at work when they become parents, and whether that's fair and what we can do about it, and what is in your autonomy to fix as it pertains to growing in your career and continuing to be visible and be seen and be thought of for promotions and not passed up in opportunities. So let's just dive right into it. So you probably got to where you are in your career. If you're listening to a podcast like this, I assume that you are a pretty decent top performer. That's tricky to say. And you got there by going probably a bit above and beyond. It's that old thing where we say like your 100% is probably somebody else's like 150%. Like you giving it all is a lot and has always been a lot. And what I hear a lot in my coaching sessions with clients, when we do our VIP days, we meet for an entire day or 2-hour sessions if we're virtual. Oh my goodness, it is, it's such a real thing. And something I hear almost every single session with my coaching clients is, I just feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm being passed up. I feel like I'm being forgotten. I work with a lot of folks who are coming and going from a parental leave, and they're like, do I remember anything? Do they remember me? Am I being passed up for opportunities that I don't even know about because I'm not there? And that is kind of as it pertains to the parental leave. And then as we're talking about going ahead in your career, you have kids, maybe you're finished having kids, maybe you're in the middle of having kids, and your time is limited. And the yeses that you were able to say beforehand, before you were a parent, the yeses that were like, oh, can you stay a little bit longer? Like, could you help us with this? Could you mentor this person? The person stops by your desk and they're, the CFO, and you're like, oh, I could really have a great chat with this person right now. A lot of that goes away when you become a parent. And I know a lot of you listening are probably like nodding along, being like, yep. Having to, I actually feel like my heart's fluttering a bit thinking about this. When I went back to my corporate job, it was in an extremely demanding environment, and it was just so hard. And I never realized how much I relied on those yeses and that extra work as a way for me to prove my worth, to show my value. And that in and of itself was a really interesting exploration. Now, yes, am I a nerd in this whole space? Absolutely. Have I studied leadership development, coaching, personal development, personal growth? How can we better oneself? How can we be the best version of ourselves and all that? Like, this is 100% my domain, but I have a feeling you'll find this interesting too. If we really think about that from perhaps if we go there for a quick second, like the gendered, conversation around this is that if you are a woman listening, oftentimes, and I heard an awesome podcast about this recently on Mamma Mia Out Loud, they were talking about how women often play that like nurturing role in organizations. And that nurturing role can come out as being really helpful, doing a lot of extra, unpaid work, if you will, less visible work, or work that is more visible but is not, necessarily like acknowledged or anything like that. A lot of times we will then attribute that extra work as the reason why we were able to get ahead in our careers. So it is, man, as you can tell, it's such a doozy, and it's a really hard conversation to, have. It's a hard conversation it's not really a conversation you would have unless you have got a really great relationship with, say, like a manager. And it's one that I don't think that, at this point in this moment of time, in this way in which we are supporting working parents, working mothers, we've come a long way with women at work, but I think there's still a lot more to go. I don't think there's like this beautiful bow that we can wrap this whole conversation up in. But I do think that it's worth acknowledging and recognizing that this is such a real thing. And if you've ever felt a morsel of this, if you're currently feeling this now, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, it's okay to feel that. And by feeling that feeling, kind of like we talked about in part 1 of this FOMO series, if you will, it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean that you're a bad mom because you're feeling like, oh, I wish I could give a little bit extra at work. Let me use 2 examples. So I'll use myself as an example first, as someone who is now an entrepreneur. And I have been finding recently, I've come back from vacation, and that's when I'm like fueled and filled with ideas and inspiration. And it totally resets me to just completely unplug and then come back and jump back in the game. I've got podcast episodes coming out my ears. I'm lining up these incredible guests and working with some really cool brands and partners. And I have been noticing that the beginning half of my days, I get to plan my own days. The beginning half of my days, say we'll have some calls and some meetings. I'll do a little bit of, like deep work, checking things off the list for other people that I owe work to, or my podcast manager, or clients I'm working with, etc. And then it gets to the end of the day and I start working on something creative, like something that's like an Instagram carousel or a reel or clips for the podcast. And I get so in it because I actually find that stuff quite fun that it becomes 4:45, which is when our child care is finished and I'm back on the clock as mom. And I'm like, I'm in the flow, like I'm in the zone. I could really keep going here. And now I have to like pause this and move on. And there's a part of me that mourns the time where I could just keep working and then make back up that rest time later. But now it's not rest time that I'm missing out on. It is time with my kids, which is way more important than this reel I'm working on. But it's also so important to acknowledge that, like, yes, sometimes we do get in a flow, or sometimes we do want to go that extra mile. So let's use a corporate example. You might be, and we started to talk about this in that first episode, you might be somebody who, again, has been really used to saying yes and gone above and beyond and really crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's, like put a bow and a cherry on top of every single piece of work that you do. And maybe, I have a feeling, you were also somebody who would take on a lot of the responsibility versus perhaps like really relying and trusting your team to do the thing. So now what it might look like is you having to hand over the reins a little bit more, maybe to counterparts or team members who you might perceive as not being able to do it quite as well, or not being able to go through things with a fine-tooth comb. Now, of course, if you're in finance or you're a lawyer, like that's a negotiation you're going to have to figure out because it's important to be super detailed for, but for most of us and the most like most of the things that we're talking about here, sending the email, this and that, it's, does it really need 120% or like, is the 100% okay? So it's this grapple. And it's not that I necessarily have a solution, but I think what feels so important to share, and this is going to be such a quick episode, but is just as that reminder that you're not crazy in feeling this, even though there might be days where it drives you crazy to be feeling this constantly, but that this is an opportunity for you to step into a new version of leadership. And that's what I hope that you can take away from this episode today is not mourning the person that you were. Because also, if we really think about it, the person that you were when you were growing your career was probably more junior in your career for most of us, was a bit more green, was just kind of up and coming. And now you're probably, 5-10 years into your career and you have that much more experience and that much more chops. And now this is the work that I used to do when I was in-house at Aritzia, was how do you move from being that really kick-ass individual contributor to being a people manager or a leader? Like who is your leadership persona? What is that leadership presence that you are now stepping into? And whether you like it or not, maybe you might still be an individual contributor, but I really encourage you to step into this era of leadership, of leading your life, because you're already probably leading your household or a co-leader of your household. You are a full-fledged adult, so you are leading your life as a human being. You're making decisions for yourself on finances, wellness, what you buy, everything. And now it's time to really step in, like catching up at work and being like, okay, I'm no longer this really good junior employee. And even if you do have a quote unquote junior title, like you are somebody who has experience. Being a parent or mother has given you so much extra. Oh my goodness, they've done studies on this. Like you are a better human being and a better working professional because you were a parent now. And so really stepping into that. And I'd encourage you to like take a deep breath right now and see how your chest rises and how your shoulders go up. I want you to hold that posture for the rest of the day. Take breaks, but I want you to stand up a little bit taller and really reflect on where you've come from, where you are today, and who is this version of yourself as a leader in your life that you want to just radiate out. And I bring up this conversation of leadership as it pertains to FOMO and not being able to be as visible at work, because some of the best leaders in the entire world are the ones who day to day, minute by minute, are actually the least hands-on. Now, don't get me wrong, you still have to be good at your job, but the greatest leaders are the ones who take a step back and really trust their team, really trust their colleagues, really trust their coworkers, and really trust themselves. So when you're writing that email, instead of looking over it, 5 times, I'd hazard a guess that you're actually getting a lot more efficient at your work. Whether you write emails or, you do manual labor or whatever it is, you're probably getting more efficient because the reward of getting to go home to your family, sure, it might be wild, but it's so much greater than just saying, okay, I'm off work now and I kind of get to choose what I want to do. There's like this motivation that's inside of you. And so I want you to think about that for the rest of the day. I want you to think about it this week. I want you to share this episode with a friend. If you could do that, first of all, what a gift you'd be giving them, because you are sharing with them that they themselves can also really step into their power of leadership, and just a reminder that they are doing their best and they're kicking ass just like you are. And I would thank you very much if you could share this episode with a friend. This was so short. I hope it was sweet for you. It was really fun for me. And I am just looking forward to maybe more of these quick little hit episodes of me just riffing on a topic with a few little notes in hand and just reminding you that you are doing great. You are great. You're a wonderful parent. And I'm so excited to hear from you about what this new version of leadership and who this new version of yourself really is. So find me on Instagram at allfiguredoutandrea. And thank you so much for joining me again this week.